Today with us, we have the Sonic guy, Paul Reiser. Paul tells us a story of when he was a kid. He was sleeping on the floor of his father's Sonic restaurant to all the way to 2021 when he had a successful exit as one of the largest Sonic franchisees in the country. He scaled it to 38 locations, 1,200 employees, managed a family office, and all the things that go into growing a successful multi-million-dollar business, including the real estate. This is an episode you're not going to want to miss.
Trying to reach my goals, got no time for mistakes. Yeah, I'm standing on business, need a big safe. Suited up, got the blueprint in the briefcase. It's go time on the grind, these are big stakes.
Broadcasting from the Franchise Sidekick studio, welcome to the Sidekick Life. Get ready for stories of passion, problem solvings, and success from those living life on their terms. All right, welcome to the Sidekick Life. I'm super excited today. We have Paul Reiser, and Paul is someone that I actually reached out to because I loved his content. I love seeing what he was doing on YouTube, living the American dream, telling other people about it. And so we said, man, we need this guy on the Sidekick Life. So Paul, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course. I want to dive right into it. The American dream, business ownership, we talk about it all the time. And you are somebody that went from sweeping the floors at a Sonic restaurant to eventually owning 38 of them, managing family dynamics. You accomplished a successful exit. This is what people want to know about. And so I want to dig right into the beginning. Tell us about how it all started.
Well, I mean, you say the beginning, sweeping the floors. I was actually sleeping on the floors because my dad is the one that was the first Sonic franchisee in our family. So, hopefully it's inspiring to know how a family that didn't know anything about business went from absolutely nothing to, 38 Sonics. We did about 72 million our last year before we exited. So, and I always say, man, if anyone can do it, I can do it. And if I can do it, anyone can do it. So hopefully it's encouraging to people to know that, you can do it. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Paul. No, go ahead.
So our story, if it really starts with Merlin Reiser, my dad. So he was, like I said, poor. He was number 7 of 8 kids. And they were just broke in poverty. And he said, well, the way I'm going to get out of this is I want to get into some kind of business. And so he was always trying something. Even from a young age, he was that kid that would sell candy out of his locker between classes. And my favorite thing is his dad would give him a quarter for lunch. But he worked out a deal where he could get off campus during lunch. He would go to a close restaurant, wash dishes, eat for free, and then keep the quarter. So the really exciting thing is he started doing that when he was 8 years old. So Merlin was a gangster from birth.
Yeah.
And I know what you're thinking, Tyler. Totally illegal, but Merlin never cared much about the law. He just wanted to keep that quarter.
I wasn't thinking about that. I was actually thinking my kids are behind, just so you know. The first thing is my kid's 10, and what is he doing? That was my first thought.
Yeah, I didn't get enough. You never got a lot of empathy or sympathy from Merlin if you were slacking as a kid in my house. But he was always trying something. He was a great salesman, great hustler, but he really didn't learn business until he had a kind of a mentor that got him into the Sonic franchise business. So he sold the house, took everything he had, and moved 600 miles across the South from Kansas down to Monroe to get our family into a Sonic restaurant, 25% of a Sonic restaurant business. And we were that kind of awkward family when you go to a restaurant and you see the mom and dad working real hard and then the kids are working in there too. So I was 12 years old car hopping, and I made a lot of money though. I was a cute kid, so don't worry about it, Tyler. Again, totally illegal. But that's just kind of the way I grew up, literally in the business. And my whole life I wanted out of the business. So as we grew up though, and everyone went their own separate ways, eventually you realized, man, Dad's doing pretty good with these restaurants. And I kind of want a taste of that running the restaurant myself. So my dad's daughters, my beautiful sisters started marrying these really smart guys. And so Dad kind of started collecting them to come and they would run drive-ins for him. And they weren't just regular. I mean, one guy had an MBA. He was a big salesman he was a buyer for Beech aircraft in Wichita, Kansas. And he's like, man, flipping hamburgers, that seems to be working out good. He came to town to start working for us. I got back into the Sonic drive-in business, and we were all doing our own things. I had 50% of one drive-in. My brother had 50%, blah, blah. And we said, at the time, my dad had 8 drive-ins. This was well into the activity. And so we said, if we form our own business, we form a management company and work together, what could we do? So we formed a management company in 2002. And over the next 10 years, we went from 8 drive-ins to 38 drive-ins. So when you work together, things go pretty quickly.
That is incredible. So I want to go back a little bit here. So you skipped something that's important. So your dad, you said you guys are poor and doing all this stuff. And then how did he get that 25% of that Sonic? I want to know exactly how that went down. Tell me how he either convinced or invested, or how did he get that first 25%? Because that set up everything else.
Right. People think, a lot of times people hear the story and they think, oh, well, that guy had something. That guy had something that I didn't have. So dad was broke. What he did do, he did a great job as a bread salesman, and whatever he did, so he made good relationships along the way. And, back in the 70s, these guys, have you ever seen a truck that pulls up behind a restaurant or a grocery store, the bread men, they come in with their big racks and they load the bread. Well, that's a hard job. You get up early, you work long hours, and these guys would be loading bread into the back of Sonic drive-ins, and they're saying, man, these guys sell a lot of hamburgers. This must be a good business. So Dad's supervisor was in the Sonic business, and Dad reached out to him and said, how do I get a Sonic? And he's like, well, the territory, you're in Kansas, but there's a territory in Monroe, Louisiana, about 530 miles away. So if you want to come down here, you can get 25% of the drive-in. So he actually sold the house. He had to sell the house and scrape together $6,000 equity to buy his 25%, not the land and building, just the business. So, it's not without significant risk and personal, just telling my mom alone that was the plan was a big risk.
And so how old were you when this went down? Like the whole moving and 25%, how old were you?
I was 9. So Dad, he was 38 years old at the time. So when you're 20, that sounds really old. Like we're sitting there going, oh, he was still just a baby. But 38 seemed like kind of old to move across the country and start from scratch.
Yeah.
Paul, I have not met Merlin, but I love him. I mean, this is a masterclass, right? Yeah. I mean, working hard to get his money, surrounded by the right people, took advice from an entrepreneur to become an entrepreneur, sold the house, moved away. So many people, that want to get into entrepreneurship, they wonder why other people get opportunities or why they get the breaks or why they're successful. And a lot of times it's because they rolled up their sleeves and they did the work.
Right.
So what a great family you had an opportunity to learn from. Tyler, sorry, I think you were going to ask a question, but I'm diving in.
Go for it.
So, Paul, we fast forwarded all the way now to the management company where your dad had 8 locations. You now start a management company. For those listening and wondering, what does that mean? And how did you divvy up responsibilities? Will you talk about that just real quick?
Sure. Well, the good thing is a lot of people think, well, your dad owns the place. You must, he just hands you out $100 bills and you don't have to work hard. The opposite was true. Dad's like, well, you're supporting, you're working for the family. So you need to work harder than anybody else and unfortunately make less than anybody else because, hey, you get room and board. So I definitely grew up, working every position in the drive-in. It was very important that we all be good at what we did in the drive-ins. But when forming a management company, like I said, I'd gone back to school, got my degree in video production, which is why I make all these videos all the time. That's my love and dream. But when my wife, we were married 3 years, we were like 26 years old. I said, man, I'm not making any money making videos, but I know I have a very particular set of skills that I've honed over a lifetime of flipping hamburgers. So maybe Dad will let me back in the drive-in business, and he was quick to let me back in. So I managed a Sonic and was pretty successful at that. So like I said, we had, at this time now we've got a brother running a Sonic, another brother running a Sonic, another brother running a Sonic, me running a Sonic, but we did have different skills. And we're like, well, when we formed the management company, it was basically just a way that we could run all the Sonics as if we owned 100% of them. Mm-hmm. So you're gonna have to edit some of this out. I hope you guys are good at editing because the way our management company worked was my dad still had some other partners in some of his other businesses, and he wanted us to run all the Sonics. And I said, well, sell me a percentage. And he's like, no, you just need to run it. So we're like, well, we need to figure out a way that we can be compensated for that.
Right.
So we created where every Sonic had a management fee that they would pay 1.75% of sales into the management company. And then we would run every Sonic as though it was our Sonic.
Yep.
So by this time, we had a situation where we had supervisors. So every Sonic had a manager, and then every 5 Sonics we had a supervisor trained in place. And then I was over operations. My brother-in-law was over operations. I had one brother-in-law that was our CFO. So what did it mean to be a management company? It meant we had a system in place, and it didn't matter if I owned 50% of this drive-in or none of this drive-in. I would treat it like I owned 100% of it. So I would train up a manager in a store where I owned 50%, but if I needed him in a store where I didn't own any, I would put that guy in the store where we didn't own any. So basically, it was a process where everybody was given 100% for the whole company and not worried about their own 25% or 50% where they were.
That structure is so important. We talk about this, Ryan and I talk about this a lot, right? You got to find those people to help run your business, and you have to set them up in a way where they're going to be successful, but they have to be successful, if that makes sense. So that's
right.
really important. How did that discussion go down? I'm anxious to hear this because I've been in family businesses before. You're coming to your dad and be like, we need fairly compensated. You got other dynamics here. How did that conversation go down?
It was not super smooth the first time. Dad just basically was very used to saying things and everybody just did it, and finally, to have a little bit of that pushback, like, Dad, we've got a big business here and we have to start treating it a little bit more like a larger business. And, we have partners and everyone has to be treated the same way. So, it is a challenge. Like you said, the family dynamic when I'm the youngest of 5 and I'm the president of the company. So there was some jealousy and a little bit of frustration early on, but we worked together so well and we were always working toward the common goal. So it worked together. Worked out really well that we had 5 members in the family and we had a monthly partner meeting and we would come together. So some people didn't work a lot in the business. Some people worked every day, but once a month we'd come together and we'd bring the accountant because I didn't want to talk to my family. I'm great as the boss over 38 Sonics, but my partners were 5 even partners, and it didn't work out well if I came in and said, this is the way it is. So we would bring our accountant into the meetings, and he would go over the books and said, well, this was your sales this month. This was this is how much money is in the bank. And so everybody's like, okay, cool. We got money in the bank. And then we could communicate and say, all right, here's the plans we have for the year. And you need to do that every month because it's a lot more smooth if you meet every month and say, this is our cash flow and this is our goal. We want to build some Sonics. We want to build some Sonics this year. We need to borrow $4 million. You don't want to come together after 6 months and not talking to anybody and saying, right. Oh, by the way, we just built a new Sonic and we need to borrow $4 million.
Makes perfect sense. And by the way, Paul, you keep talking about the family and how you're the head of the family. I feel like we're talking to a mafia boss, but I gotta keep remembering.
Merlin's the mafia boss.
Yeah. You're the junior boss. Talk to me a little bit about how you grew restaurants. So, we obviously are in the franchise business. We love it because we believe growth opportunities exist all over the place, whether it's new build or whether it's acquisition of existing. And then of course the exit oftentimes is great too, because you got other franchisees around that are interested in buying. Talk about how you grew. What was your strategy?
So that was the challenge because we didn't really have a strategy except we just wanted to grow. The great thing about a franchise, one of the great things about a franchise is, you can be worried about your own little drive-in and say, I want to build another drive-in or another business. Well, you can go to the franchisor and say, you know what, we can't put another Sonic in Bossier City, Louisiana. My little town of 60,000 people. We got 4 Sonics. So we want to expand. Where are you developing? So they said, well, here's a few areas, South Alabama, North Carolina. And we went and looked at the areas, and South Alabama was a lot closer for us. So we're like, we're gonna reach out to South Alabama. So we just we were able to go and put our foot in that area, which is a big challenge when you jump 2 states away and try to start from scratch. So the way we would go early on was you build a Sonic where you're a son or a son-in-law. You run that Sonic. You get the sales up. You create a couple of assistant managers that can replace you and go into the new Sonic. It's very important to always be able to replace yourself.
Yep.
And then I would find a location and I'd say, okay, here's the location. Let's build it there. And Sonic would come and approve it. And so then we would go and start building it. And basically I would just take some of the core people from one existing drive-in and kind of plant them in that new drive-in and start to grow it. And we eventually became a system. People would always ask me, so why don't you just try like all different kind of franchises? And I'm like, well, this is duplicatable. I have my core group of people. And once I get 5 Sonics in an area, now I take my best manager and make him a supervisor. And that provides another opportunity for people to move up in the ranks. So I think in order to grow, you have to replace yourself and you have to show people in your organization that there's opportunity for them to grow.
That's really good. So real quick here. So did you give them any sort of equity, or like, how did you convince people to move a state away? Did you give them anything, or how did that work?
Yeah, no, this is actually a masterclass in mistakes. If you really want to see
that
what
works
it is,
too.
because
That's just as good.
This is a big deal for people, because a lot of
Right.
franchisees can get to 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 locations locally. But then you got to start, if you're in a fast growing concept, you have to think about, where do I go now? What's the next hot spot? And so that's a very common challenge, because then you got to hire over there, or typically what you're doing is fantastic, but then they got to have some skin in the game, because if they leave you, you're toast.
Right. And we actually did have a partnership opportunity for some of the people. We took 3 supervisors with us to the new territory, and we sold them a percentage of the drive-ins that they were working in for a very nominal amount, kind of like Merlin. Here's, we gave them, I think, $25,000 and to get into their business. And then they all left after a short amount of time. There wasn't the money in the new territory. So we were having to actually buy them out so that they could leave our new drive-ins that were losing money. So basically Alabama was just a big hole where we poured money for about 8 years.
Wow.
But we could see that it was coming, and we were growing. We were growing some good people over there, and the sales were slowly growing. And there's just a tipping point. People don't understand when you get into a franchise or any kind of business, every dollar that comes in isn't profit. There's a break-even point, and until you make that break-even point, you've got to pour money in. And it's not until after you get out of the break-even point that you actually even begin to make pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
So, but the good news is, if you get through it and you own the land and building like we did, eventually you're able to start not only making money, you start collecting rent, and then when you do have the exit, man, those stores were sweet.
Well, and that's the thing. And again, just so many lessons that come out of your wins and your losses is the time, consistency, execution of a plan. And it's not always going to go exact, but you had the home base that created the financial cushion you need in order to invest into another market. So I think there's just a tremendous number of lessons out of that. What about Sonic itself, right? And so I know you kind of grew up in it, so it wasn't like you chose it over others. But what advantages were there from being in a Sonic versus other fast food opportunities, and what were the disadvantages?
Well, I would say for anybody, people ask me, why don't you just start your own business? Why should I get into a franchise? Because they do tell you what to do to a certain extent. If you said, no, I know the best chili in the world, just got to sell my chili. Well, you don't need to be in a franchise probably. But if you want a duplicatable system with a big group of people that are doing your marketing for you, they're doing your mass buying for you, they're picking out your, point of sale systems. The opportunity is to have a system that's already in place that you can buy into. Like I said, Dad was a great salesman, and he was a smooth talker, but he really didn't have that business concept. So that's the good thing about getting into Sonic. And Sonic was a great partner. They really did care about their franchisees. They really were motivated to help you, because if people are closing restaurants, that's certainly not good for their brand. But at the same time, if you just screw up and you start losing money and you don't do what they say, they're going to come pull your sign down too.
Would you say it was overall a successful franchise group within Sonic? Were most of them successful?
Oh yeah. There's probably 360 franchisees and 3,500 Sonics across the country. There's, Sonic actually divides you into groups, and you get a scorecard every month based on how you're doing. So small operators have 1 to 3 stores, and then medium, and then large, and then Sonic size, extra large. So if you got more than 30 drive-ins, you're in the largest group. So there was 30 franchisees with more than 30 Sonics. So we were in the largest size. But then there's a couple of super big timers that have like over 300 drive-ins. There's about 3 of those. big timers.
Yeah. Amazing. What about employees, right? So how many employees did it take to run 38 locations?
Well, man, I hate to tell you how many W-4s we sent out every year because there's a lot more than the number of employees. We average between 12 and 1,300 employees at our max, because it takes, the problem with the Sonic is you've got cooks, you got people making drinks, you got car hops running the orders out. So if you're a busy Sonic, you're going to run 15, 18 people at a shift. So you got to have 30 to 60 employees per drive-in. So we had 1,200 to 1,300 employees at any one time.
How many on roller skates?
Not enough, never enough.
That's right. But so, I mean, think about it. We probably don't have a lot of people that listen to this that have 12 to 1,300 employees, but if they aspire to grow to that, what are the systems that work to hold accountable and manage and compensate 12 to 1,300 people?
1,200 employees. I didn't know the 1,200 employees per se, but I knew those 38 managers really well.
Yeah.
And so the secret really for us for growing a successful business, and I haven't really bragged yet, the fact that we usually ran 20 to 30% above the chain average in sales, which always impressed Sonic because we had a lot of Sonics in really small towns. But the secret for us was your employees are never going to treat your customers better than you treat your employees. So we always just try to hire nice people. So if you hire a nice manager, he can hire nice people and they can be nice to your customers. So our average manager tenure was about 15 years.
Wow.
So we had people that we really tried to take care of, and that would usually correspond with them taking care of their employees, and then they would take care of the guests. So what's the plan? Our managers, we paid hardly any salary, but we had a bonus structure that gave them the opportunity to make a lot of money. So our average was probably about 63,000. But our top performers were making 100,000 managing a drive-in. Our supervisors made, considerably more than that. So the opportunity was all in your bonus, all performance-based. So the more money you made, the more money we made. And we never moved that up like, oh, you had a good bonus last year, so we're going to make your numbers harder this year. I hate it when that happens.
Right.
It's always based on a percentage of, we would set your bonus based on 5 criteria, and 3 of them were based on growing sales, and 2 of them were based on controlling costs.
So you had your average manager there 15 years, and your criteria was hiring nice people. Like there had to have been other things involved, Paul. Like you said, you hire nice people, they stay 15 years. I'm like, am I missing something? Maybe I should just hire nice people. Like what's happening? So
no, just hire nice people.
Yeah, I mean, you had to have, obviously you had performance metrics, bonuses, it sounds like, but you had to create a culture that people love to work for you, Paul.
Well, we did have a good time. Have you checked out any of my videos at the Sonic Guy videos, the old ones?
I've seen a few. Yeah, maybe not some of the ones you're talking about, but I've seen a few. Yep.
I didn't see any happy people. No, actually, even when we close, even at the end, every manager I had at the store, I'd say maybe 3 out of 38 we hired from outside. 35 of them we hired from within. So you get a chance to grow them up. So you have to train. You have to have food safety, serve safe certified managers at every shift. Sonic requires there to be someone on in the drive-in at all times who's serve safe certified. Well, that's hard to do. We were spending a ton of money sending people to these certification courses, and they last 3 years. So I said, I'm just going to get certified and start training them at my office. So I became a serve safe trainer. And people aren't eligible for bonuses until they became ServSafe certified. So assistant managers could get bonuses as well after they met the criteria, and one of them was being certified. So I would get to see all these people that my managers were considering to be assistants. So that gave me an opportunity to see them, to tell them more. I would teach them food safety because they had to pass the test. And we wanted, number one criteria is safe food. But I also talked a lot about our business. We had pep rallies every year. We would go into the skating rink. We'd say, send your best people to the skating rink. I'd bring in the local hockey team and we'd give skating lessons. We'd play Let's Make a Deal. I'd give away, tons of prizes. So we had a lot of fun, and we were able to keep our eye on the kind of shining stars, and we would kind of groom them up from within to become supervisors. Even our supervisors at the end, one of them was on my dad's very first payroll in 1977. Chris Herr. That sucker was with us till the very end.
Shout out to Chris. So Paul, I'm going to pivot on you a little bit. We're the Sidekick Life, and we believe that all entrepreneurs are sidekick, and I'm sidekicks. And I'm curious as to your answer, because I don't know if it's as obvious here. Like, who were you solving something for? Like, if you were a sidekick, who was your hero? Who did you protect or guide or help?
That's interesting, because I think the leader is a servant. Mm-hmm. The guys I know in Sonic and everywhere that are the most successful are the most humble.
Yep.
They're the guys when you go, I want to go meet this guy and see how he's doing it. And before you know it, they're asking you more questions than you're asking them. They're the most humble. Early on was my dad's sidekick for sure. He said, we knew you were going to be the one that had to take over the business, Slick, and I was definitely, his sidekick and kind of the guy that was the cushion between him. He was pretty intense. And, so I was his sidekick. And then when we'd go into restaurants, I would always try to be the supervisor's sidekick. Supervisor for us is someone that runs a territory.
Yep.
So I would say, look, there's things that I can do that you might need that only I can do for you. So I would always try to find, like, how can I serve you guys? I can't cook a hamburger very well. We're going to be in trouble if the grill doesn't show up. But so I was the sidekick of the supervisors. I was the sidekick of all my partners, my brothers and sisters, because we were all partners in different ways. So my sister put on great. We would do our own Christmas party every year, but she was the star, and I would be like the MC.
Yeah.
So,
and I love that answer. I think oftentimes people always just assume they're the sidekick to the customer, right? But in your case, I like it because you were the sidekick to your dad, helping to build the business, and then now as a leader, you're the sidekick to other leaders who then have to be sidekick to their people, who have to be sidekicks to the end customer. So I love that perspective. I actually think you're the first that has answered it that way, and I really like it.
That Paul, that's my favorite answer we've had in whatever 15 or 18 episodes. That's my favorite answer, because I wasn't sure where you're going to take that. And I love what you did there, because that's the truth, because that's a natural leader right there. From my perspective, I'm looking at you as a leader, because that's what leaders do. They step in, they help their team grow, they help their team get better. That's the epitome of what a leader should be. And you just summed it up perfectly in like 20 seconds. So fantastic job.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was great.
But the most important sidekick now at this stage of my life, well, actually through my whole life, has been my wife. Mm-hmm. We're associate sidekicks because, early on, we got married when we were 22 years old. And, really, I'd love to tell you the story how I got into the Sonic was I needed a job so bad. Cause she's like, we're about to have a baby. And I'm like, Dad, I need my job back. But when I did take over that Sonic, for the second time, she allowed me to work 80 hours a week. Cause I'm like, I'm going to be the best manager I can be. I don't know if I'm going to be the best one in the world, but I'm going to be the best I can be. So I just threw myself in. So I was working 80-hour weeks for about 5 years. I had dropped down to 65 hours a week probably, but, and she never gave me any grief, so she wasn't like, I'm not saying, women support your husbands no matter what, but she knew it was a partnership. I wanted these Sonics to be great for us. And when I didn't show up to her family's fish fry, it wasn't because I didn't love her. It's because I loved her so much that I was going to make this business so successful that we can take your family to a fish fry in France now if we want to, Yeah. So she was supporting me in that dream. And she was also that when I came home, I said, I feel like I'm coming home to an oasis instead of coming home to a fight, which, so she has been my partner from early on, and then a partner as a parent. And then now in our retirement, we're having a good time. So she's just my partner in enjoying it.
Well, see, not only are you a good leader, you're a smart man. You're also the first one to call out their wives, as you being a sidekick. So you're just getting all kinds of brownie points here today.
Come on, she won't listen to this. I promise. She's too busy to listen to any. She has.
Well, you might have to tell her to listen to it. All right. So I want to talk more about Sonic. When I think of Sonic, and again, the role of a franchisor to build a national brand, especially when there are thousands of locations like Sonic is, when I think of Sonic, I think of the commercial with the two guys sitting in a car. Right. Either advertising chili dogs or milkshakes or whatever the next thing is. So Sonic to me feels like it's a constant evolution of menu. It's a really nice job of memorable marketing. Talk a little bit about that. Like, what was the menu item that you guys couldn't live without? And what was the ad campaign that you were like, whoa, this thing just blew the roof off of the business?
Yeah. So I got in the business in 1977 when I was 9 years old. So I definitely remember, the whole thing. It started out actually with Frankie Avalon in 1977. He was the first guy. And then the guy from Happy Days, the dad. And Sonic, struggled. It went up and down and up and down. But we had in the core markets, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and Louisiana, you could not do wrong with a Sonic. You open up a Sonic and people are like, what you need is a car hop, an extra long cheese coney, fresh made onion rings, and a cherry limeade. And that was your core items.
Yeah.
So as we grew, finally they came in and created a consistent menu because, got a lot of guys that were like, man, Sonic makes some good chili, but I can make better chili,
Really?
So
everybody
tried to do their own thing.
When people were still doing that, what year was that? Like when franchisees were still doing that?
That was in the 80s, the blazing 80s, baby.
I think of like Ray Kroc, like the Ray Kroc story on like Netflix. And it's like, yeah, I can make chili. Like, why would I do chili? Like, that's amazing. So in the 80s, even after 15, 20 years or 30 years, they're still doing this.
Oh yeah. Everybody's Sonic started in 1953.
Yeah.
And it was a mess. So this guy named Steve Lynn kind of came along in the 80s and said, we got to get a consistent menu. We got to get consistent specs. And that's really what happens because if you can be a great Sonic operator, but if the guy down the street's a terrible Sonic operator, people don't like Sonic. So you got to have that consistency along the brand. And there's always going to be better Sonics and worse Sonics. Everybody's got their favorite Taco Bell. I drive past the Taco Bell on this street to get to the Taco Bell on the other street because that's the better Taco Bell.
Right.
And you just got to be that one that even though you're all the same brand, if you want to be successful, you want to be the one that everybody comes to. But Sonic really blew up when they came out with the two guys. The two guys really changed everything. Actually, I think they get all kinds of ad awards as being the longest running ad campaign in the history of television or something.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, Sonic actually thought they were making too much money. So a few years back, they got rid of the two guys and they hired a ad lady from Pepsi. Came in and tried to really, and when YouTube first started out, like late 2000, 2007, something like that, and she tried to make all her commercials kind of real hip and early YouTube-y, and they were so weird. People were like, what the heck's going on? And because they're from Kansas City and New York City, and Sonic is Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and they're like, what is this singing egg doing? I don't understand. And so then Sonic had to go hat in hand back to the two guys to get them back.
And they probably got even more money after that.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say,
more money.
Leverage. Yeah. Holy smokes.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sonic got smart. Sonic's not perfect. Your franchisors never perfect. And you got a bunch of guys in there and they're trying to do their best and we're trying to do our best. And Sonic, when you get a franchise, what you want, what I always tell people look for is it a good system? Is somebody already making money and they're doing a good system? Because that's what they're selling you, the system. Mm-hmm. And do they have good marketing? And Sonic has both of those things. Mm-hmm. So that's why we were able to grow really, really strong with Sonic.
To go back to Ryan's point though, like specifically, I know those guys came out with different things. And like, I remember those like Super Bowl ads, like that kind of stuff. And they came up with some crazy food from Sonic. I remember some specific ones, but was there one that like really stood out where the ads went out within a couple days, smart, like everything went up, revenue went up, like you were busier. Like, do you remember that at all happening?
Well, why you see so many different items is Sonic's concept is they actually kind of went away from the core items and they said, okay, we're going to kind of change our strategy here and we're going to come out with a new item every single month. And so you have new market news because people get in the habit of going away from that somebody else lures them away and they get in a new habit. So Sonic's like, we got to get them back. So we're going to have a Red Bull slush. Red Bull slushes, man. Boom. That was a big deal. Toasters. They came out with hamburgers on toast, double cheese toasters. That was a big deal. So there's been a lot of them. Actually, what really changed it, every once in a while, one of those things is so big that they leave it on the menu. And one of those was popcorn chicken. So they came out with popcorn chicken, big chunks of, like chicken nuggets, basically. Yep. And then you have to change the menu. So if you look at a menu in 1979, it was about the size of a 16-inch laptop computer. If you go look at them now, I don't know what it is. It's got to be 3x4. It's huge. So there's been a little bit of menu creep. That's a little bit of the pushback from the franchisees is, hey, this menu's getting a little unwieldy.
Yeah, so, that's definitely the opposite. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, the good thing about a Sonic too is if you own your own restaurant, you're trying to run the restaurant. You're trying to hire the people. You're trying to negotiate with your vendors. And then it's like, oh man, I need to come up with a special. Valentine's Day is next month. I need to come up with a special. So if you're trying to wear all those hats, you're really going to exhaust yourself. And that's a great thing about a franchise is Sonic has a whole floor up there. They're just figuring out the new marketing. And I got to be on the franchise advisory council many times over the years. They have franchisees come into work. And I was on that food tasting committee. So I got to know about 6 months out all the new things coming out.
Oh man, I bet that was a committee everybody wanted to be a part of.
It was.
You say all the menu items, it feels a little bit like the opposite of Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, they kind of boast, less than 5 menu item changes in the last 10 years. But Sonic, they're doing it more of a promotional side, like, hey, the Red Bull slushies, the Super Bowl foods, which I got to imagine as an owner became challenging at times, right? A lot of moving parts. But if it drove revenue, I suppose it was worth it.
Well,
not every time, sometimes.
On the FAC committee, I would always push back and say, back in 1979, when I was a kid, we made, we had a simple menu and we got the orders out in 2.5 minutes and it was better. And they're like, oh, we can't go backwards, So there's always tension.
Sure.
But if you also notice, Cane's Chicken has about probably a 4.5 million average unit volume, and they have one item: chicken and
nothing.
waffle fries.
It's incredible.
So easy. I love
Welcome to chicken. Welcome to pie. What does it say? Welcome to Cane's. You want some chicken?
That's right. Piece of cake.
I envy the small menus.
I do too. Yeah. Paul, you had mentioned something. We kind of flew right by it earlier, but you had said something, I believe, around borrowing, around $4 million a year to build new restaurants. Right. Again, so small business owners, they want to grow. They need access to capital. They don't always have it. What would be a couple of things you would tell them, or what was the best strategy you used to be sure capital was available to you for growth?
I had a great banker. He really believed in us. And my dad taught me when I was very young, one of the very first lessons is, Paul, pay your banker first. If there's anything left over, eat.
That's good. But it's so true. That relationship is a relationship you've got to keep happy, right? You got to, I bet you had to keep them informed often. You probably met with him or her often to make sure they knew what was going on, and it allowed you to have access to capital.
We met with our banks all the time, but the first one's the hardest. But then when you're paying back consistently, and that's another good thing about being with a franchise, is the bankers have a lot more flexibility when it comes to financing franchises because they have, they have a history and they know what to expect.
Right.
So, the first one you're going to have to come out of your pocket with 20%, so you might need a money partner. But then when you start building up a little equity, and the reason we went slowly is because we wanted to own the land and building, and we wanted to get as much financing as possible. So toward the end, I could just get a line of credit for $4 million a year and just, pay as we went. We were financing 100%. But that's not the way it is early on. Early on, we had a small business loan. My dad had a rich friend that put in on one of his Sonics, and I ended up buying him out. That's how I got into it. You just got to be super creative. But the most creative thing you got to do is never spend more money than you have, because you have to have good credit, because you have to pay your bank first.
Right.
That's just all there is to it.
What about, so I know you exited, and I didn't think about it when we kind of prepped for this, but I didn't think about you being the landlord, and I didn't think about you being the real estate owner. So How did you work out that part of the exit? Now, of course, we don't need you to give specifics, but did you stay on as a landlord? Did you sell it all? Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So there's definitely an option. If you want to grow quickly, just own the business and let somebody else own the land and building. So we grew, even though it's selling pretty fast for us, we opened as many as 3 Sonics in 1 year. We like to own the land and building because we knew one day we'd pay them off and start collecting rent. There's a lot of options for, accelerating depreciation and all those sort of things, tax advantages to own your real estate. But when we sold out, we offered it in different ways. So we put it up for sale. You could buy just the business or the land and building. We had some people that offered us just to buy the business, some to buy the real estate, and most of them to buy both. And we ended up selling them both in one package to the whole thing, because this was a venture capital business, venture capital firm that wanted to get into Sonic. They wanted a company with a large footprint in core markets, which we had, good locations with many years of consistent cash flow that they could look at. So we were able to package it all up in one package and sell it. So we sold the business. This EBITDA thing, that's crazy. I don't know why anybody would evaluate us on EBITDA, but that's what we knew we had to sell.
And all the ad backs, right? Those are great. Those are great for sellers.
And then the real estate, we based it on just a CapEx. Not CapEx. We did based it on a rent factor. So we said, okay, we just have a rent factor of 6 times earnings, and so there you go.
That's awesome. So the obvious, we're to the point now, we're talking acquisition. So let's just get into it real quick. So in 2021, what happened, Paul? Work us through this a little bit. How did this whole thing go down?
So in 2019, I started hearing people start reaching out to me about, selling your business. And I'm like, maybe we'll have everything paid off, in about 10 years, and then we'll look at it. And he's like, well, this is the kind of numbers we're talking these days, which was totally different. I would say if you do own a business, always be building up your system where you can walk away from it. Build it to sell it, not just so you can sell it, but also that you can scale it. But if you do build it to sell it, you have the opportunity to walk away from it, and always be looking at what are the valuations, because over my lifetime, Sonic has been worth 5 times net. So basically net sales, say your net sales were 100,000, it's worth 500,000 for your business. There were times when it wasn't worth anything. In 2008, you couldn't give a Sonic away. They were just closing them. But then all of a sudden this EBITDA comes out and you're looking at valuations like we'd never seen or heard of before. So always be looking at what is your industry and what is your business being valued at now? Because it is always changing. It's always fluid. So at that time, we just knew that this is a great time to sell a business, because in 2019, if you'll remember, way back then, interest rates were 2%, 2.5%.
Yeah.
And there were billions and billions of dollars on the sideline because the stock market was what everybody thought was the top. And nobody was spending any money. It was just sitting there. And so all of a sudden, all these venture capital firms started paying big money to get in there. Like, you know what? Cash flow, mid-sized businesses. That's what we need. So, we just realized that's where the offers were right now. So we were kind of early to the game because my super smart brother-in-law with the MBA, that was our IT guy. He's like, we jump on this now, we're going to be ahead of the game. So we were probably the second Sonic group to sell, and we got a really nice premium for that.
Yeah, I love that advice of watch the exit value too. I've got a recent experience. I have some Orange Theories, and Orange Theories prior to COVID, they were going 7, 8, 9 times, right? COVID hits. It's still a great business. 9 times EBITDA? Yeah, for Orange Theory. As a franchisee, because this thing was booming, everybody wanted in. COVID hit, it changed the business. People kind of moved to in-home fitness, and it's rebounded. It's doing fine, but not to where it was, And instead of saying, hey, it doesn't get much better than 7, 8, 9 times, maybe we should just do it. We said, well, let's hold on. It's a great cash flowing business. And so really good advice that I also should have taken in that scenario.
And it was also the makeup of our partnership. So I'm at the time I was 54, and I was 12 years younger than my brother. So I was the youngest. So they were all kind of starting to age out, Like I said, we're looking at 10 years we were going to exit. So, it was a good time. But if on the converse of that, if we were all young and wanting to grow businesses, there's no way we would have sold. We'd have said, man, interest rate's 2.5%. Let's buy.
Okay, so you're to that point, right? So let's say, the acquisition goes through, everything's happy, everybody's good. What's your life look like now, Paul? Like, you mentioned France a couple times, you mentioned traveling. Like, give me an understanding of what your life looks like with your wife now.
Man, we were fortunate. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's your whole life, you're like, one day we're going to sell these things and we'll be fine. And maybe we'll be rich. I don't know. I was kind of optimistic. But it worked really well. I'm not a big stuff guy. We've always lived. We're kind of Dave Ramsey-ish. I mean, Dave Ramsey would really cringe when I said, "Yeah, I borrow $4 million a year." But
You'd hate that. Pay it back now. Doesn't matter the interest rate. Pay it back.
But personal, we never had any debt. My wife and I, we just always lived below our means, which is great because I had a great Sonic one year. And the next year I built one right next to it and they both tanked and I had no money but I was able to get by because we had no debt. So personally, I mean, I didn't go out and buy a Lamborghini or anything like that. I did buy a camper. I bought a little Airstream and my wife redid the bathroom. And I was thinking about that because you're like, what I heard you on one of your other podcasts, you were asking somebody that. I said, oh man, what if they asked me that? We didn't do anything extravagant because we're just not thing guys. Sure. But we do like to travel. And so what my life looks like now is I never get a call at 5 a.m. or 11 at night that somebody is, horribly ill or that canopies have collapsed or somebody drove into a building or somebody's been robbed or, we don't have those problems. Or our system's been hacked and Visa wants to fine us $500,000 or any of those things anymore. So I have a level of calmness that I've never had in my life. And it also gives us the freedom to be able to, we've traveled, we've always liked to travel, but I used to be a 4-day trip 3 times a year, but now it can be as much as I want. So yeah, we do travel a lot. Been to France a couple times, I get to go see my daughter in Chicago, great restaurants. So for me, it looks like just the opportunity to play. I have done some rent houses. I make my YouTube videos. I have some podcasts with the local TV station, do a lot of stuff with my church. It's just a dream come true, Tyler. I mean, the whole time, that whole last year, it took us a year to sell it. So when we said, yeah, let's sell it, I thought we're just going to put a sign in front, and like selling a house, you'll get a couple offers. You're like, yeah, we'll take that. Dude, selling a business, especially 38 separate LLC, actually about 42 because we had land and building and different, the due diligence and the back, it took 363 days to sell it from the day we put it on the market to the day we closed. And the whole time I'm like, is this really going to happen? It's just like, and then who are you? I've been the Sonic guy. If you look at my old videos, they're just called the Sonic guy. You go from 9 years old sleeping in the back of a Sonic, and are people still call me the Sonic guy,
Well, I'm gonna always call you the Sonic guy, Paul. And I gotta say, it's super refreshing. I love entrepreneurs like you that are really humble about it because we ask you about the exit, and the first thing you say is how fortunate you are. Let's not forget that you've been doing it, since 1977. So 44 years until you sold that thing, right? You put 44 years of work in, you borrowed millions of dollars, you employed 12 to 1,300 employees, you dealt with family dynamics. I mean, you just made it sound so easy. We were fortunate. We hit the lottery ticket. That's not, in my opinion, that's not true. You worked really hard for a really long time and you deserve every travel day. You deserve every morning you get to sleep in. You deserve to get to spend that time with your wife. And it's what we talk about, life on your terms now, because you spend a tremendous amount of time providing value to other people. So congratulations to you.
You're all right, Ryan, man. That sounds pretty good.
It's true. It's easy when it's true. But you hit on my next question too, because I also think people that have done it for that long, like you have, kind of get addicted to entrepreneurship, right? Addicted to the parts of it. And so you've now transitioned. Like, where's your purpose come from now? You probably already mentioned it a little bit, but I assume your purpose was really Sonic driven for a long time. What's your purpose today?
Our purpose actually has always been people driven. That's my dad's whole thing. He's always trying to give people breaks. He always said, someone would get to give me a break. I would appreciate it. We're always trying to lean into our folks, take care of our people. I have a strong faith. My wife and I both do. And we spend a lot of time with our church. Now we're able to give time and money to our church. And so that's very fulfilling for us. Just like to, but the challenge I would tell anybody to be wary of if you're thinking about selling your business is the people that your partners were scared to death. Like, it's very nerve-wracking because some people are like, this is my whole identity. What am I going to do if we don't do this? My sisters who had never put a dime in the stock market were like, well, how are we going to live without a paycheck? So you really got to have that communication. Say, well, it's going to take 6 months. I said, well, it's going to be 6 months. We're going to have a lot of time to educate ourselves on good places to put our money. And, I promise you're going to be fine. Mm-hmm. But it actually took, more than 12 months. But to really start getting ready, but not just what are you going to do with your finances when you get done with it. Like you said, I'm kind of entrepreneurial. I've been going 100 miles an hour my entire life. So the day I sold, I felt like, well, the next day I better do something else. So I was buying lots. I invested in a documentary film. I started making videos. I started getting on boards because I'm like, oh, now I have to prove that it wasn't just the hamburgers, that I can do this. And so that first year, I almost killed myself tasting too many things. Mm. So it really took me 3 years before I could even we've been out 3.5 years and I can't believe it. But before I could even sleep well at night, being able to relax and say, I don't have to prove anything, that I just enjoy the time with my family, enjoy the time that we're doing things with our church. I'm not doing nothing. My wife's like, you're not coming home, are you? I'm like, no. Because we sold our office a year after we sold the business. And so I just got an office downtown. I get up every morning, I work out, I go to my office, I meet with people. I'm still on some boards. I still do a lot of things because I feel like I should be giving back and I have to stay busy.
Right.
But I'm also leaving myself plenty of freedom. So when my buddy said, hey, my bucket list is to go skiing in France, I'm like, let's go.
Let's go.
Pretty cool.
Well, actually, I love what you said about trying to figure out what to do. I remember in between one of my exits, I was at home with my wife, and she had a funny line. She said, when we got married, I said, for better or worse, but not for lunch. You got to get out of the house. You got to go do something. Get out of here. You're in my space. Yeah. So I know
you're not coming home, are you? So we love. She said, I love our days. I love when you come home every night at 6 o'clock. We have dinner. I'm like, so don't come home early, right?
Don't come home before 6 o'clock. That's right. Paul, this was great. This was one of my favorite hours on this show. It really was. You're not only fun to talk to, but your story is amazing. I was genuinely interested in just understanding how you did it. So thanks. I'm sure our audience is going to be as well. Just to wrap it up, you're doing stuff on YouTube still. I know you still dabble in it. So if somebody wants to see your stuff, what do you recommend?
So go to YouTube and in the search bar, put @ The Real Paul Reiser, or just put Paul Reiser Business, Reiser. Find me on LinkedIn, Paul-Reiser on LinkedIn and reach out. I put videos on there. I do some speaking in between trips to France and Croatia and different places. And that's always fun. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want me to talk about service and trying to get your folks to have a good time at work, but focus more on investing in customer service than trying to save money by fighting that customer, which is always a challenge we had. So I'm just taking the things that I learned running our businesses over the years and putting them into little 3-minute videos and putting them out there. So I'd love people to go to my YouTube channel, comment, tell me what you'd like to see, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. It's kind of fun. Actually, it's a lot of fun.
It is. Awesome. Well, Paul, thanks for being with us. Keep living that American dream. And for those of you that stuck around for an hour, we appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us on the Sidekick Life, where we highlight true sidekicks, entrepreneurs who've got their customers' backs, solve real world problems, and after helping enough people, get to live the life they've always dreamed of. We'll see you next time.